Ancient human DNA contains the secret galactic civilizations need. The morning sun crept through the blinds of the laboratory as Dr. Hana Kim rubbed her tired eyes. For 3 years, she had been studying ancient human remains found in a remote cave system in the Andes. Most researchers had overlooked this particular site, but Hana felt drawn to it for reasons she couldn't explain. "You're still here?" asked her assistant June, placing a steaming cup of coffee beside her microscope. "Did you even sleep last night?" Hana shook her head, her attention fixed on the screen displaying the DNA sequence she'd been analyzing. "Look at this pattern," she said, pointing to an unusual arrangement of nucleotides. "I've never seen anything like it before." The 15,000-year-old remains had yielded DNA that was remarkably well preserved, but what caught Hana's attention wasn't just the preservation, it was the strange sequence that didn't match any known genetic pattern in the database. "Could it be contamination?" June suggested, leaning closer to the screen. "I've run it 5 times, Hana replied, taking a sip of coffee. "Whatever this is, it's real." Outside the lab, life continued as normal across the globe, until early that evening when air traffic controllers in 12 different countries reported unusual atmospheric disturbances. Within hours, social media exploded with videos of strange lights descending from the sky. Hana was too absorbed in her work to notice the commotion until her phone began buzzing incessantly with news alerts. She looked up from her microscope to see June staring at his phone, his face pale. "You need to see this," he said, turning the screen toward her. The news showed footage of unidentified objects landing near historical human settlement sites across the world. One of them just 30 miles from their laboratory, at an ancient burial ground they had planned to explore next month. "This can't be a coincidence," Hana whispered, looking back at her computer screen where the mysterious DNA sequence still glowed. Within hours, military vehicles surrounded their research facility. A stern-faced woman in a crisp suit introduced herself as Director Park from National Security. "Dr. Kim, we need to discuss your recent findings," she said, her voice leaving no room for questions. Director Park explained that similar objects had landed near archaeological sites worldwide. "Each landing site corresponds to a location of ancient human remains," she said, spreading a map across Hana's desk. The pattern was undeniable. Every landing aligned perfectly with sites containing human remains from the same time period Hana was studying. "What does my research have to do with this?" Hana asked, although a knot in her stomach suggested she already knew the answer. "That's what we're trying to figure out," Director Park replied. "But whatever you found might be what they're looking for." That night, as Hana was escorted to a secure government facility along with her research materials, she gazed up at the stars and wondered if the answers to the mystery in her test tubes had come from above. The unusual DNA sequence had appeared to contain information, almost like a code embedded within human genetics thousands of years ago, waiting to be discovered at precisely this moment. At the facility, Hana met other top scientists gathered from around the world. All had been working on ancient DNA, and all had found the same mysterious sequence. As they compared notes, the building suddenly trembled. The lights flickered, and an alarm blared. "They're here," someone whispered. Through the facility's windows, Hana watched as a craft unlike anything she'd ever seen descended onto the helipad. Its surface seemed to ripple like water despite appearing metallic. When the craft's door opened, Hana held her breath. She had imagined this moment in science fiction, first contact, but nothing prepared her for the reality. The visitors looked surprisingly human-like, yet with subtle differences in their proportions and movements that betrayed their non-terrestrial origin. The leader approached the facility entrance with perfect composure, flanked by others who carried devices that pulsed with soft light. Director Park stepped forward to meet them. "We have been awaiting your signal for centuries," the visitor said in perfect, unaccented speech. "Now that you have found the marker, we can finally proceed." Hana stepped forward, clutching her research notes. "What marker? What does this DNA sequence mean?" The visitor turned to her, eyes reflecting a depth of knowledge that made Hana shiver. "It is the key," he replied simply. The key that both our peoples have been searching for, though you did not know you were looking. As government officials whisked the visitors away to a secured meeting room, Hana caught the leader's final words to her. Your ancestors left a message in their blood, not for you, but for us. And now, after thousands of years, we have come to read it. Hana looked down at the DNA analysis in her hands, suddenly understanding that she hadn't discovered the sequence by accident. Somehow she had been led to it, and now the future of two civilizations might depend on what was hidden in humanity's most ancient code. The world watched in stunned silence as Ambassador Tay stepped onto the stage at the United Nations. Cameras flashed and reporters whispered frantically into their microphones. No one had expected the visitors to reveal themselves so openly, yet here they were, addressing the entire planet just 3 days after their arrival. Hana sat in the second row, still trying to process how quickly her life had changed. One moment she was analyzing ancient DNA in her lab, and the next she was being flown to New York as a scientific consultant for this historic meeting. People of Earth, Ambassador Tay began, his voice carrying a slight musical quality that no human voice possessed. We come to you not as conquerors but as travelers facing a grave challenge. Our civilization has existed for thousands of your years, but now stands at the brink of extinction. A murmur swept through the assembly hall. The ambassador waited for silence before continuing. Long ago, our ancestors chose to enhance themselves with technology. Generation after generation, we modified our genetic code, seeking perfection. We achieved remarkable advances, extended lifespans, resistance to disease, enhanced intelligence, but we lost something essential along the way. Beside Hana, Director Park was taking careful notes. On her other side sat Dr. Lee, a geneticist from Seoul University, who had also found the mysterious DNA sequence in different ancient remains. Our bodies can no longer adapt to changing environments, the ambassador continued. Minor shifts in temperature, radiation, or atmospheric composition that your bodies would naturally adjust to in time can kill us within hours. Our children are born weaker with each generation. We face extinction not from war or disaster, but from our own genetic frailty. Hana leaned forward, beginning to understand the connection to her research. For centuries, we have studied other intelligent species across the galaxy searching for a solution. 50,000 of your years ago, we discovered Earth. Your ancestors were remarkably adaptable, surviving in deserts, Arctic regions, high mountains, environments that would kill my people instantly. We began monitoring your development, watching as you spread across your planet. The ambassador touched a device on his wrist and a holographic display appeared above the stage. It showed human DNA, specifically, the mysterious sequence Hana had discovered. This genetic pattern, Ambassador Tay said, pointing to the display, exists only in your oldest human remains. It contains instructions for environmental adaptation that surpass anything we have seen in other species. Over time, as humans developed technology and controlled their environments, this sequence became dormant in your genetics, present but no longer fully expressed. Hana's heart raced. She raised her hand without thinking, and surprisingly, the ambassador nodded to her. Are you saying you guided me to find this sequence? She asked, her voice echoing through the suddenly silent hall. Ambassador Tay's expression softened. Not just you, Dr. Kim. We have been subtly directing promising researchers towards sites where this genetic marker is most prevalent. The cave where you made your discovery was once visited by our researchers. We left certain impressions in the surrounding electromagnetic field that would attract curious human minds like yours. A cold shiver ran down Hana's spine. Had her entire career been manipulated? Was her interest in that particular cave site ever truly her own choice? The UN Secretary General stepped forward. What exactly do you want from us, Ambassador? A partnership, Tay replied simply. We need access to this genetic sequence to save our species. In return, we offer technological and scientific knowledge that would advance your civilization by centuries. Later that evening, in a private meeting room overlooking the New York skyline, Hana sat across from a visitor scientist, named Jiho. Unlike Ambassador Tay, who looked almost completely human, Jiho had features that were subtly different. Eyes slightly too large, fingers unusually long, skin with a faint luminescent quality under certain light. Your discovery is remarkable, Dr. Kim, Jiho said, examining her research notes. You isolated precisely the sequence we've been searching for. But I still don't understand why you need us, Hana replied. If you've been studying humans for thousands of years, surely you've collected DNA samples before? Jiho set down the tablet. We have, but the sequence is deteriorating in modern humans. And more importantly, we don't understand how it works. The genetic code is only part of the solution. We need to understand how it expresses itself in living tissue. A thought occurred to Hana. You need living humans who still carry active versions of the sequence, Jiho nodded. Precisely. And our research suggests they still exist, particularly in populations that have lived in extreme environments for generations without modern technology. Director Park, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. What happens if we refuse? To help? Jiho's expression remained neutral, but Hana noticed a slight tension in his posture. Then we will continue searching elsewhere in the galaxy, but we have found nothing like this sequence in thousands of years of exploration. Without it, our civilization has perhaps 3 generations remaining before genetic collapse makes reproduction impossible. As the meeting concluded, Hana stood by the window watching the city lights below. The weight of what was happening pressed down on her shoulders. These visitors had crossed unimaginable distances because something in human DNA held the key to their survival. Something her ancestors had possessed naturally, something that modern humans had begun to lose as they shaped the world around them rather than adapting to it. Dr. Kim, Ambassador Tay said, joining her at the window. I sense your unease. Hana nodded. You've been watching us for thousands of years, guiding our research. How do we know we can trust you? The ambassador looked out at the city for a long moment. You don't. Just as we don't know if we can trust humans with the technology we offer in exchange, trust must be built between us. He turned to her, his eyes reflecting the city lights. But consider this. We could have taken what we needed by force. Instead, we come asking for cooperation. As Hana left the building that night surrounded by security personnel, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity stood at a crossroads. Whatever came next would change everything. Not just for the visitors who had traveled so far, but for every person on Earth. The secure research facility built in the mountains of Jiangsu County hummed with activity, day and night. What had been an empty valley 3 weeks ago was now a gleaming complex of laboratories and living quarters, constructed with technology that allowed the visitors to build structures in days rather than months. Hana adjusted her microscope, focusing on the cellular sample. Beside her, Do-Wan watched with intense interest, his eyes rarely blinking, one of many subtle differences that marked him as non-human despite his otherwise familiar appearance. The cells are responding to the temperature change, Hana noted, making a small adjustment to the environmental controls. They were testing how quickly human cells with the active ancient DNA sequence could adapt to rapid temperature shifts. Look how the membrane structure is already changing. Remarkable, Do-Wan said, his voice carrying that slight musical tone all the visitors shared. Our cells would begin breaking down at this point. Outside the lab windows, snow fell gently on the mountains. 6 weeks had passed since the visitors had revealed themselves to the world, and global reactions had ranged from religious awe to paranoid fear. Some countries welcomed the exchange program enthusiastically, while others remained suspicious, refusing to participate. The visitors had established similar research centers in 12 locations around the world, each studying different aspects of the ancient human genetic sequence. Hana's phone buzzed with a message from her brother Jin. Mom's asking when you're coming home for a visit. She's made kimchi 3 times already, preparing for you. A wave of homesickness washed over Hana. She hadn't seen her family since this all began. The work consumed every waking hour, and the security protocols were strict. She quickly typed a response promising to visit soon, though she wasn't sure when soon would be. "Family?" Do-won asked, noticing her expression. Hana nodded. "My mother is worried about me." "Understandable," Do-won said, returning his attention to the microscope. "Family bonds are important to your species." "And not to yours?" Hana asked. Despite working together for weeks, the visitors shared very little about their personal lives or culture. Do-won was quiet for a moment. "We evolved differently. Our young are raised communally. I have genetic contributors, but not parents as you understand them." Their conversation was interrupted as Director Park entered the lab with Ambassador Tay and several government officials in suits. "Dr. Kim, we need an update on your progress," Director Park said, her expression serious. "The UN Security Council is meeting tomorrow to vote on expanding the exchange program." Hana guided them to the research displays, explaining their findings, in terms the non-scientists could understand. The ancient sequence contains instructions for cellular regeneration that modern humans have partially lost. When exposed to environmental stress, heat, cold, radiation, toxins, these cells don't just survive, they adapt permanently. The changes are passed to new cells during division. "And you believe this can help our people?" one of the officials asked Ambassador Tay. "It's our best hope," the ambassador replied. "Our genetic enhancement focused too heavily on intelligence and longevity. We sacrificed adaptability for stability." Later that evening, Hana joined a video conference with scientists from the other research sites. Dr. Yoon from the underwater facility in Jeju spoke excitedly about discovering specialized cellular structures that allowed ancient humans to process oxygen more efficiently at extreme depths. Dr. Park in Mongolia had found evidence that the sequence enabled faster adaptation to high altitudes. "The question remains," said Dr. Beck from the Arctic Research Station. "How do we activate these dormant genes in modern human DNA? And can we transfer them safely to the visitor's genetic structure?" The discussion continued late into the night. When the call finally ended, Hana stepped outside onto the facility's observation deck. The cold mountain air filled her lungs as she gazed up at the stars. Somewhere out there was the visitor's home world, a planet they rarely discussed. "Beautiful night," came a voice behind her. Director Park joined her at the railing, offering a steaming cup of tea. "Thank you," Hana said, accepting the cup gratefully. "Any news from the Security Council?" Director Park sighed. "Countries are divided. Some see this as the greatest opportunity in human history. Technology that could solve energy crises, climate issues, disease. Others fear we're giving away our biological heritage too freely." "And what do you think?" Hana asked. "I think..." Director Park paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think technology can be reverse-engineered, but extinction is permanent. If the visitors are telling the truth about their situation, how can we refuse to help?" The next morning, Hana arrived at the lab to find Do-won already working, though she hadn't seen him leave the previous night. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked jokingly. "Less than humans require," he replied without looking up. "I've been examining the protein structures formed during the adaptive process. I believe we've identified the key mechanism." He showed her the molecular model on his screen, a complex structure that shifted and reformed as the simulation ran. This protein complex acts as a scaffold for cellular reconstruction. It's activated by environmental stress and guides the adaptation process. Hana studied the model, amazed by its elegance. "Our bodies naturally formed this when exposed to new environments?" "Yes, but modern humans have lost much of this ability. Your ancestors could adapt to new environments within a single generation. Now it takes hundreds of years of gradual evolutionary pressure." A thought struck Hana. "Could we reactivate this in modern humans?" "Theoretically, yes," Do-won said, his expression unreadable. "That would be significant." That afternoon, Ambassador Tay presented the Security Council with the first stage of technological exchange, designs for energy production that used principles human scientists hadn't yet discovered. The imagery was broadcast worldwide, and Hana watched on the lab's screen as representatives examined holographic models of devices that could provide clean energy for entire cities. "This is just the beginning," the ambassador told the council. "We have medical technology that could eliminate most human diseases, transportation systems that don't damage your environment, communication methods that would connect your world in ways you've only imagined." The vote that followed was decisive. The exchange program would continue and expand. Hana felt both relief and a nagging unease. The research was fascinating, potentially world-changing, but something about the visitors' eagerness troubled her. That night, as she was preparing to finally leave for a short visit home, she passed Ambassador Tay speaking with another visitor in their native language, a flowing, complex sound she'd never heard them use before. They switched immediately to English when they noticed her. "Dr. Kim," the ambassador said smoothly, "I understand you're taking a well-deserved rest." "Just a few days," Hana replied, studying their expressions. "I'll be back soon." As she left the facility, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had been lost in translation. Not just in language, but in the larger exchange between their worlds. The visitors were offering remarkable gifts, but as her grandmother used to say, nothing valuable comes without a price. The familiar smell of her childhood home had almost made Hana forget the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Almost. Her mother busied herself in the kitchen, preparing more food than the family could possibly eat, while her father peppered her with questions about the visitors that she couldn't fully answer due to security protocols. "They look just like us on TV," her younger sister Mina remarked, passing Hana a side dish. "Do they really come from another planet?" "They look similar," Hana acknowledged, "but there are differences when you're close to them." She didn't mention the visitors' unusual eye movements or the faint glow visible beneath their skin under certain lighting conditions. Her phone buzzed with a message. Dr. Sung, a colleague who specialized in genetic applications, had sent her a file marked "Urgent, Private." "Work again?" her mother asked, noticing Hana's expression change. "I'm sorry," Hana said, already standing. "I need to check something." In the privacy of her old bedroom, Hana opened the encrypted file. It contained research logs from the visitors' lab stations, data that shouldn't have been accessible to human researchers. Dr. Sung had added a note. "Found this while upgrading the network security. Something's wrong with the Mongolia data. Compare it with yours." Hana's fingers flew across the screen as she compared the research data. The discrepancies were subtle, but unmistakable. The visitors' internal reports showed far more progress, with adapting the human genetic sequence than they had shared with the human scientists. More concerning were references to combat applications and environmental warfare resistance that appeared nowhere in the shared research goals. Her planned 3-day break at home lasted less than 24 hours. By morning, she was on a secure flight to meet Dr. Sung at a private location. "I've been suspicious for weeks," Dr. Sung explained when they finally met in a small tea house in Busan. The former military intelligence officer had the cautious eyes of someone used to looking for threats. "The network security at the research facilities is designed to look like it's protecting us from outside hackers, but it's actually monitoring everything we do. Could it just be normal security?" Hana asked, keeping her voice low despite the privacy screen Dr. Sung had activated. "No. Look at this." He showed her more documents, requisition orders for specialized equipment being shipped to a secondary facility that didn't appear on any official records. "They're building something else, something they don't want us to see." That night, using Dr. Sung's security credentials and a carefully timed distraction, they entered the restricted wing of the Busan research facility. The laboratory they found was unlike any Hana had seen before, more advanced, with equipment the visitors hadn't shared with human scientists. "What is all this?" Hana whispered, examining containers filled with what appeared to be growing tissue, samples. "Military applications," Dr. Sung said grimly, accessing a computer terminal. "They're using the human adaptation sequence to create biological enhancements. Look at these designs." The screen displayed models of humanoid figures with modified skeletal structures and muscular systems. Notes in the visitor's language had been partially translated to English. Desert combat variant, water storage capacity increased 300%, Arctic infiltration unit, thermal regulation enhanced, low oxygen environment adaptation complete. They're creating soldiers, Hana realized, her blood running cold. Soldiers that can fight in any environment. A noise in the corridor gave them barely enough time to hide before two visitors entered, including Ambassador Tay himself. They spoke in their native language as they examined the tissue samples, occasionally switching to English. The host compatibility testing is proceeding well, one said. We should have working prototypes within 6 months. The Council will be pleased, Ambassador Tay replied. This breakthrough will change everything. Not just for our people, but for our position in the greater territorial disputes. And the humans? There was a pause. They have played their part admirably. Once we have what we need, the exchange program will be concluded. Hana's hand trembled as she recorded the conversation with her phone. When the visitors finally left, she and Dr. Sung slipped out through an emergency exit, barely avoiding security patrols. We need to inform the authorities, Dr. Sung said as they drove away from the facility. Which authorities? The visitors have representatives in every major government now. We don't know who to trust. The next morning, as Hana prepared to return to her research station, news broke that Dr. Sung's apartment had been destroyed in what was being reported as a gas explosion. There was no sign of Dr. Sung himself. Heart pounding, Hana didn't go to the airport as planned. Instead, she took a series of buses and trains, eventually reaching a small coastal town where her grandfather had once maintained a fishing cabin. It was the one place she could think of that wasn't connected to her official records. As night fell, she sat by the window, watching the ocean and reviewing everything she knew. The visitors needed the human adaptation sequence, that much was true. But rather than using it to save their dying species as they claimed, they were weaponizing it, creating soldiers that could fight in environments that would kill their enemies. Her phone lit up with messages from Director Park and others at the research facility, asking about her delayed return. She didn't respond. Instead, she called the one person she believed she could still trust, her former university professor, Dr. Kang, who had connections with independent scientific groups. They're using us, she explained after ensuring the call was secure. The exchange program is a cover for military research. Can you prove it? Dr. Kang asked. I have recordings, data files, but I don't know what to do with them. If the visitors have infiltrated our governments, not all of them, Dr. Kang interrupted. There are still people we can trust, but you need to stay hidden while we verify your information. 2 days later, as Hana was preparing to meet Dr. Kang's contact, she noticed unusual movement on the beach outside the cabin. Figures that moved, too smoothly to be human, were approaching from both directions. With seconds to spare, she grabbed her research, slipped out the back window, and disappeared into the dense forest behind the cabin. As she ran, she heard the distinct hum of the visitors' energy weapons activating. They weren't just looking for her, they were hunting her. For the next week, Hana moved constantly, using cash instead of cards, avoiding cameras, and sleeping in abandoned buildings. She made contact with Dr. Kang's network, a loose collection of scientists and military personnel who shared her suspicions about the visitors. At a safe house outside Seoul, she finally met others like herself, researchers, who had discovered inconsistencies in the visitors' story. They're not a single unified civilization, explained Dr. Jin, a physicist who had worked at the African research station. Based on communications I intercepted, there are at least 2 factions among them. One genuinely needs the adaptation sequence to survive. The other, the military faction, wants to use it for conquest. Ambassador Tay? Military faction, definitely. He's been diverting research from all facilities to their weapons program. Hana spread out her own research on the table. Then we need to find a way to help one faction without empowering the other. The adaptation sequence could save their species, but not if it's weaponized first. As the group planned their next move, Hana stared at the genetic sequence that had started everything, the ancient code within human DNA that had drawn visitors across the stars. It contained the key to survival, adaptation, and resilience, traits her ancestors had developed naturally through countless generations of struggle and perseverance. Now it was up to her to ensure that this gift from humanity's past wouldn't become a weapon in humanity's future. Rain drummed against the roof of the abandoned factory where Hana and her team had established their makeshift laboratory. Equipment salvaged from university storage rooms and private collections hummed as they worked day and night, racing against time. 3 months had passed since Hana had gone into hiding, and the world outside had changed dramatically. Another research facility went online yesterday, Dr. Jin said, looking up from his tablet. That makes 17 worldwide now. Hana nodded grimly, not taking her eyes off the genetic sequencer. And still no word from Dr. Kang? The group fell silent. Their mentor had disappeared 2 weeks ago while attempting to make contact with sympathetic officials. No one wanted to voice what they all feared. The modification is stabilizing, Hana said, changing the subject as she examined the results on her screen. I think we've done it. The team gathered around her workstation. What they saw represented thousands of hours of collective work, a modified version of the ancient human adaptation sequence. It contained all the elements the visitors genuinely needed to save their species from genetic collapse, but was incompatible with the military applications they had discovered. Will it work? Asked Minho, the youngest of their group, a brilliant biochemist who had once worked alongside Do-won. In theory, Hana replied. It provides the adaptation mechanism without the specific traits they're trying to weaponize. Their people can survive environmental changes, but they can't develop the enhanced strength or specialized combat adaptations. Now, we just need to get it to the right faction, Dr. Jin said, stating the impossible task that loomed before them. That night, as the others slept, Hana sat by the window watching lightning flash across the sky. The past months had taught her more about herself than the previous 30 years combined. She had discovered a determination she never knew she possessed, a willingness to risk everything for what she believed was right. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft beep from their perimeter alarm. Someone was approaching. Heart racing, she woke the others. They had protocols for this, equipment to destroy, research to hide, escape routes planned. But before they could begin, the security monitor showed something unexpected. A single figure walking slowly toward the building, hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. It's Do-won, Hana whispered, recognizing the visitor even through the rain. It's a trap, Dr. Jin insisted. We need to run. But something in Do-won's manner made Hana hesitate. He's alone. No backup. That's not how they operate. Against the others' objections, Hana went to the loading dock door. Through the small window she could see Do-won standing in the rain, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen one of the visitors. I need to speak with you, he called out, his voice barely audible through the door. I'm alone, please. With Dr. Jin covering her with an improvised weapon, Hana opened the door just enough to let Do-won slip inside. Water dripped from his clothes onto the concrete floor. You have 30 seconds to explain why I shouldn't shoot you, Dr. Jin said coldly. Because I want the same thing you do, Do-won replied. To stop the military faction before they destroy everything. Over the next hour, Do-won revealed what they had suspected but couldn't confirm. The visitors were divided. One group, led by scientists and healers, had come to Earth seeking salvation for their dying species. The other, a military faction, that had grown powerful during conflicts with other spacefaring civilizations, saw humanity as a resource to be exploited. Ambassador Tay and his supporters have taken control of most research facilities, Do-won explained. But there's growing resistance. Many of us came here to save our people, not to create weapons. Why should we trust you? Hana asked. Do-won reached slowly into his pocket and removed a small device. Because I brought this. Access codes to the central communication network. With this, you can broadcast directly to our council back home. The only authority that can override Ambassador Tay. The team debated late into the night. Trust was in short supply, but options were limited. Finally, they agreed to a desperate plan. They would use Do-1's access to infiltrate the main research facility during the upcoming global conference, where representatives from all visitor sites would gather. 2 days later, Hana found herself walking through the front doors of the Seoul Convention Center, wearing the uniform of facility maintenance staff. Security was tight, with both human guards and visitors technology scanning attendees, but Do-1 had provided credentials that passed inspection. "Remember, we'll only have 3 minutes once I access the main system," Dr. Jin's voice said through her earpiece. He and the others were positioned in a maintenance van outside, ready to broadcast their findings globally once Hana connected the transmission device. The main hall was filled with government officials, scientists, and visitors. On stage, Ambassador Tae was presenting what he called the final phase of the exchange program, a demonstration of technology that could supposedly end energy shortages worldwide. Hana made her way toward the control room, her heart pounding so loudly she feared others might hear it. As she rounded a corner, she came face to face with Director Park. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then understanding dawned in the director's eyes. "The East Service corridor is unmonitored," Director Park said quietly. "I'll make sure it stays that way." With a grateful nod, Hana changed direction. Not everyone had been fooled by the visitor's promises. The control room was exactly where Do-1 had indicated. Using his access codes, Hana connected their transmission device to the main system. Immediately, the screens throughout the convention center flickered. Instead of Ambassador Tae's presentation, they now displayed Hana's research, evidence of the military applications, recordings of secret meetings, and finally, the modified genetic sequence they had developed. "People of Earth and honorable council members," Hana's pre-recorded message began. "What you're seeing is the truth about the exchange program." Chaos erupted in the main hall. Ambassador Tae shouted orders as his security team scrambled to shut down the transmission. But it was too late. The signal was being broadcast not just within the convention center, but to every research facility worldwide, and most importantly, directly to the visitor's homeworld. Hana was seized by security personnel almost immediately. But she didn't resist. She had done her part. Now it was up to others to decide what happened next. The following days passed in a blur of isolation cells and interrogations. Then, without explanation, Hana was brought to a meeting room where Director Park waited alongside an elderly visitor she had never seen before. "Dr. Kim," the visitor said, his voice carrying more warmth than she had heard from any of them before. "I am Elder Sue, representative of the council. We have reviewed your transmission and conducted our own investigation." He gestured for her to sit. "Ambassador Tae and his supporters have been removed from their positions. They acted without council authorization, pursuing military applications that violate our most sacred principles." "And the exchange program?" Hana asked cautiously. "Will continue if your people are willing," Elder Sue replied, "but with complete transparency and with the modified sequence you developed. Your solution was elegant. It provides what we truly need, without enabling what some misguided among us wanted." 6 months later, Hana stood on the observation deck of the new joint research facility. Below, human and visitor scientists worked side by side, studying the implementation of the modified genetic sequence. Early results were promising. The visitors' children born with the new sequence showed remarkable environmental adaptability, without any of the militarized traits Ambassador Tae had sought. "The first generation should reach maturity within 3 years, Do-1 said, joining her at the railing. He had become the primary liaison between the visitors and humanity, his commitment to peace earning him respect from both species. "And your people will survive?" Hana asked. "Yes, thanks to your ancestors, and to you." As the sun set over the research facility, Hana reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. What had begun with a curious genetic sequence in ancient remains had led to humanity's first steps into a wider galactic community. The visitors had established a permanent scientific outpost on Earth, sharing knowledge while carefully respecting boundaries established in the new agreement. The secret hidden in human DNA The ability to adapt, to change, to survive against overwhelming odds had turned out to be humanity's most valuable contribution to the stars. Not as a weapon, but as a gift of life. You know, Hannah said, watching the scientists below, my grandmother used to say that family is more than blood. It's who you choose to protect. Du-Wan considered this. A wise perspective. Perhaps our peoples are becoming a kind of family. Now. Perhaps, Hannah agreed. But like any family, we'll need to work at it every day. As night fell and stars appeared above the facility, Hannah thought about all the challenges that still lay ahead. The road wouldn't be easy, but if there was one thing both humans and visitors had proven, it was that adaptation, whether genetic or cultural, was the key to survival.